in FP3, and he's also on the injury list.
Yeah, and he'll certainly be confident of finishing off his time with Honda with some good results this weekend. The wet conditions, though, depending on just how wet they are, that's going to be a challenge for Bautista as well.
Axel Bassani here, who has impressed once again in the Superpole session earlier on today. As far as Superpole results, Toprak Razgatlioglu taking his third pole position in 4 rounds. Jonathan Ray finishing directly second behind him, a 12th front row start in 13 rounds for him. It is the 5th round in a row in which he's been beaten in Superpole sessions by Toprak. As far as Bassani is concerned, the target is Garrett Gerloff, and he's got him right in front of him. 4th position in that Superpole session, Garrett Gerloff. Axel Bassani, in terms of the championship, trails by 14, and that's important because they're the top 2 independent riders for the Wsbk Awards at the end of the season.
Yeah, and Gerloff in the ascendancy this weekend. He was 3rd fastest yesterday, 3rd fastest in this morning's free practice session, and 4th fastest on the grid, and he's going to have the opportunity of getting some decent results this weekend to close out what's been a trying season for the American. There's been some real flashes of what he can do in the early stages of the season. Hopefully we get to see that Garrett Gerloff now at the end of the year.
Here is Garrett Gerloff, as I said, 14 points clear in the pecking order for the Independent Riders Award, and Axel Bassani putting him under increasing pressure. GRT Yamaha actually confirmed the Independent Teams Award winners after Argentina. Of course, they've got Kota Nazane contributing points for them as well.
Yeah, you can see here from yesterday's free practice 2 very different conditions before us now. You can see the bright sunshine. It was 65 degrees track temperature yesterday. It's now 33 degrees.
Yamaha runners performing generally well around this circuit. They're known for having an adaptable package Yamaha, and they've got 3 riders in the top 5 positions on the grid.
Yeah, and Uzel there in pit lane as well with Toprak. So we saw Jonathan Ray getting a bit of advice from Leon Haslam. Jules Cluzel's just after coming back in from the end of that Super Sport race, so that's about as up-to-date as it gets for Toprak.
Yes, nice and tropical as well by the looks of it for Jules Cluzel, preparing to jump into one of those makeshift pools that they've set up at the back of the pit garages. A couple of umbrellas up in pit lane, as you can see. We've already seen shots of the spectators with their ponchos on, but they've been very rain averse in this build-up so far to this World Superbike race. We just had some information from Anthony, our pit reporter, as well, that there are some spots of rain in pit lane. Up in the commentary box, I can tell you that we have both got smiles on our faces. This is going to make for something really interesting, and that's more than spots of rain. I tell you that we can see there. It's driving down, and it's actually now slashing against our
arts map.
There is nobody who's going to dictate my future except for me.
Quando ho tirato per la prima volta un calcio a un pallone, non pensavo che un giorno avrei giocato il mondiale. Pensavo solo alla gioia infinita di inseguire quella palla.
Minacce sotto forma anonimati.
Lo dice un pedofilo fa. Questi messaggi sono stati inviati anche alle società sportive. Alla sera prima mi arriva un messaggio a me e mi fa: state attenti di mano, a me sparano.
All'improvviso c'è stato il caos.
Non sei voluto andare via! Hai messo zizzanne, sei stato tu!
Mi chiamo Fabio e questa è la mia storia.
2 rounds in particular, though. A couple of missed opportunities elsewhere as well, ruling him out of the running for the championship. He's 3rd in the standings.
Just looking outside our commentary box window on the front row of the grid, Jonathan Ray's teammate Alex Lowe's is out there, so he's going to be there to give Jonathan a little bit of his perspective about what it is right now. As it is, the rain is coming down heavier and heavier as Toprak Razgatlioglu leaves the pits to make his way to the grid.
In the build-up to this round, in the build-up to this race, everyone was talking about there must be one final sting in the tail for this championship. It's been such a legendary campaign campaign, it would be unusual, it would be unfitting for it to go out on a whimper with Toprak finishing first today and Jonathan Rea finishing third and the championship all settled. Doesn't look like it's going out on a whimper to me. This is going to be bravery at its greatest as far as the World Championship decider is concerned. Took the championship lead, did Toprak Razgatlioglu, this man, by a point at the Catalonia round. He's steadily increased that margin since then, but that margin's going to come under threat, particularly in these wet weather conditions.
And you can see how much heavier it is coming down now. Again, looking outside our commentary box window, Haslam and Lowe's both stretched in underneath an umbrella on the front of the row of the grid, so they're both there to give Johnny as much advice as they can, and it's going to be really interesting to see what choices everyone makes. I don't think we're being this excited to see a Pirelli tyre sheet at any stage through the course of this season, but you can see for Rea as he makes his way around this track, this is the first time any of these guys have been out there in wet conditions. Really important to be able to try and push hard on this lap as well, so that you can see what the grip level's like, see where the puddles are, see if there's anywhere where the rain does tend to collect and drain towards. So this is a very important couple of minutes for all these riders to be able to go out there and get as much information as possible.
You're so excited about seeing rain ahead of a championship decider. Well, I'll tell you why. Firstly, because Jonathan Rea is the rider who trails in points. He's 30 down on Toprak Razgatlioglu, and he is a wet weather specialist. He performs well in these conditions. Toprak, throughout his superbike career, has generally struggled when the weather has been like this. Think back to wet weather races even earlier on this campaign. Didn't have the headline results that he's had in other circumstances, but also because the possibility for more riders to get into the mix at the head of the field is that much greater. Think about Michael van der Mark and what he was able to do in Portugal. Think about Tati Mercado, he always goes well in the wet. The number of riders who could get in between Rea and Razgatlioglu will increase exponentially with wet weather. But I must say, Steve, the amount of rain that's coming down now makes me doubt whether we will even be able to start this race at the planned time, which may mean a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card potentially for Toprak Razgatlioglu, because the visibility there is not going to be good enough to go racing, surely.
Yeah, that's biblical rain at this stage, and certainly expect to see the start delayed for these riders. You can see out of our box again, Michael van der Mark's running off the grid. Quite a few people making their exits from the grid now as well, and you can see as Toprak makes his way to the grid, just these conditions aren't going to be possible to start the race on time.
Yes, I think that was almost foretold, wasn't it? That was an inevitability, because once we saw the rain coming down, the spray in these kind of conditions would be impossible to ride unless you hit the front. So Razgatlioglu with a little bit of pre-race acrobatics to scale the pit wall, and can now make his way back into the garage, which means we can continue to build up what is going to be a fascinating World Championship encounter. This man, Jonathan Rea, the reigning World Champion, that's the visibility that we're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely nothing out there right now for these riders, and certainly a bit too dangerous to be going out on this track, especially considering that they haven't been out in wet conditions at any stage here in Mandalika. So a real challenge for everyone, and the right decision being made there by the organisers.
Everyone making their way back to the pit boxes. We saw this for the support class, the Asia Talent Cup races earlier on today as well, although it wasn't raining anything quite like this, I can tell you.
Yeah, and you can see there everyone making their way back into the pits, and they do look like they've been drowned out there really, and certainly for everyone it's going to be a little bit of a delay now. We'll wait and see what update we get on a start time. Tom Sykes still making his way around that far too dangerous conditions. Very easy aquaplane in conditions like this. A lot of standing water is going to be out there.
I'd like to see where Jules Cluzel is at the moment, after we saw him in his undergarments a few minutes ago waiting to get into a pool. He didn't need to get into a pool, he only needed to stand in pit lane.
And it is still warm out there. It's 26 degrees, 27 degrees, so it is very tropical, typical of what we get here in Southeast Asia. And it is actually this kind of downpour that we were waiting for over the last few days. It's threatened to come out on the bike, but he's still pretty relaxed at this stage as we wait to find out when we'll get a new schedule here. But you can see just how quickly the conditions have changed.
I did say that Toprak has not been known for his wet weather prowess in the past through his career, and to an extent he's clearly not as strong in the wet as he is in the dry.
Yeah, in the dry conditions, Toprak as good as anyone in the wet conditions. He showed, especially in Catalonia, he's made a big step forward. He was able to open up a pretty bad problem. That would have been one of the races that would have given him a big boost in terms of his ability to perform well in those conditions.
I think the race that I call to mind to the greater extent is the Superpole race in Portimao, where Toprak just dropped backwards through the field once it started raining, ended up finishing in 6th position. Michael van der Mark on that occasion was the race winner. Unexpected rare race victory for BMW. If we end up in a heavy wet weather not only will it be more difficult for Toprak, he'll also have to be more cautious, knowing that he's got championship points he needs to score.
Well, the other side of that coin as well is in Portimao it was quite changeable. It was drying out. In these conditions, if it was to start anytime soon, that's where it would be a very stable weather conditions in terms of the conditions out on track. So you would be able to and faster as the race progressed. You'll be able to understand where the grip is. That makes it very different. But you can see there for the GRT Yamaha squad just how much rain did come down. Everyone absolutely soaked in their pit box.
Nobody ever likes a delayed start, but I tell you what, we've wished for this, haven't we, Steve? So we can't complain about it now, and let's hope we do get a wet race. It adds an extra little bit of spice.
Well, we've had spice all the way through the season, and you can see there for Garrett Gerloff relaxed in his pit box, and number 31 Yamaha getting ready for a second row of the grid start. His best qualifying effort since Estoril earlier in the season, so certainly for Gerloff, good to see him able to have that turn of speed all the way through this weekend, and hopefully we're able to see him sign off his season with a few good results. But these conditions, total lottery at this stage, so we'll just have to wait and see when the new race start will be announced, but you can see the rain still really hammering down at this point.
Kind of weather we're used to seeing in places like Malaysia and so on. It's this part of the world, isn't it? When it comes down heavily. Speaking to our colleagues who came to the circuit much in advance of the round to prepare everything behind the scenes in order for this race to take place. Of course,